Good morning, everyone. My name is Ravi. I'm the co-founder CEO of Zeeve. And today we have with us Arvind from Arcana Network.
Hey, Ravi.
Hi, Arvind. Web3 has come a long way in the last 2-3 years. And it has been a major buzzword and people are realizing the value. In fact, I was at IIT Delhi the other day, and the whole topic and the conversation was around what is Web3 vis-a-vis Web2 and why we require a new internet. So one of the challenges that we are seeing is that from a technology standpoint, it's very exciting. You have decentralization, you have smart contracts, non-custodial wallets, etc. But there are quite a few challenges when we talk about user adoption in the Web3 space. And if you want to reach another billion users in the Web3 space, of course, these challenges need to be taken care of. And among the user adoption, there are various challenges on the infra side, challenges on user experience side, challenges on some of the technology pieces which will enable solving some of these challenges. So one of the major challenge in user adoption is the user onboarding. And that's where we have our guest today from Arcana Network. I would like to welcome Arvind to this talk show. So Arvind, let's start with a brief introduction about yourself and a brief intro about Arcana Network.
No, thank you so much, Ravi. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Arvind, one of the co-founders at Arcana. We primarily build infra products for developers to be able to quickly launch and scale their applications, sort of like Firebase for Web3. And in this suite, the first product that we have launched is our At that allows the title of the topic, the title of the talk, which is like helping with user onboarding, right? And we have a bunch of others lined up around storage, access control, database, analytics, etc. Anything that devs can just plug and play into their apps.
Got it. Yeah. So before delving deeper into the products that Arcana Network has launched, that is helping with the user onboarding journey for thousands and thousands of different decentralized applications. So one, out of different decentralized application, I think the two most important kind of dApps that we have seen grow up in the last 2 years, one is DeFi and the second is tokenization, including NFTs, right? So from a DeFi standpoint, and as we see in DeFi, there are various kind of applications and tokenization. But the challenge has always been because all these applications, majority of these applications are B2C, where they would like users to use the application, whether it be NFT ticketing. So you would like end users buying tickets like we have been buying on Book My Show, right? So, but the challenge remains that how to onboard users who are not very much comfortable. So first, what are the benefits of DeFi and tokenization?
Yeah,
from your perspective.
No, I think it's large part of the benefits are derived from the underlying decentralization itself that could apply to any other decentralized application. But some of the things that are specific to DeFi that you don't find in the traditional financial market is one, the fundamental economic freedom that it offers for people to come up with their own instruments, right? Instead of waiting for regulation, licenses, and sandboxes and jurisdictions to tell where you can and cannot innovate. So that's from the creation side, right? So one is the freedom, and second is the ability to experiment, where you can move at a much faster pace than you would in the traditional markets, right? So today in some markets, it is even hard to get a license to allow payments, right? Which is almost decades old, versus being able to talk to different protocols, build on top of existing protocols, right? Because most of them are open source, they're not proprietary. There are positives and negatives, but largely we have seen that the industry has grown so much within just one DeFi summer. Some of them speculation, but a lot of innovative products have come out of it in the just the last year or two. So I think these two are very useful on the creator side, and on the user side, they get a lot more transparency. So when every time you make a transfer, interact with the product, you know exactly how it will behave. Of course, there are some products with bad intents, but at least the way it should work is clear. People can vet it, they share their opinions. If it's too complex for you to understand as a lay user versus going through like 30 pages of terms and conditions that people just blindly click on accept these days.
Right.
And the last one is around ownership. Right? We have seen time and again that when times are tough, if you have given the control of your assets to someone else, they decide what you can and cannot do, and it's left to the regulators to decide at what point you can get them back, if at all. Versus in DeFi, right? If you own the keys, you have complete control over your own assets.
No, absolutely right. I think in the Web2 space, we have been used to using custodians for managing various assets. And I think blockchain has given us an option where you can have absolute ownership of assets, whether it be NFTs, fungible tokens, or your wallet keys to manage other assets. And then, of course, financial inclusion is one deep area which DeFi is trying to solve. And I was reading an article by ING where they said that DeFi is something which is very strong and will change how we have been thinking about banking. So fintech revolution came in, but fintech pretty much improved just the front end layer of it. If you see the back end infrastructure of any bank or even the middle layer, that's still very outdated and archaic. And I think rather than updating that slowly using a simple digital transformation means, I think DeFi is going to be the next backbone of the infrastructure for banking.
Yeah, no, that's so true, because if you look at most neobanks today, they are just front ends to the same APIs.
Exactly.
Right, infrastructure, then there is very little that they can do to innovate. And I think there was a very well-received Coinbase ad that came out recently. Why is it this way? Why should I pay to not have money in my account? Right? Why does it take 5 days for my check to clear? Right. So it's funny, but it's side of sad that we are in this century with so much tech around us, where we have things like ChatGPT and AI advances, and we still have these archaic methods of banking that doesn't make any sense. Of course, I'm sure there are valid reasons for how they came up to where we are, but it's funny is how resistant it is to change.
No, absolutely. The reasons are very clear that we need to have trust while doing any business transactions, whether it be storing assets, transacting assets. The trust is definitely required. The problem is, it's not a problem that there's no trust today. There is a trust, but the trust is very expensive. You require a lot of third-party intermediaries to establish that trust in a transaction, and that's what blockchain is taking away. That it's taking that trust away from that and creating and putting that into code, so it becomes a trustless network, and you would not require redundant intermediaries. Yes, qualitative intermediaries who have been playing a good, valuable role in the transaction will still remain. But there are a lot of intermediaries who are not providing any significant value. So, Arvind, what do you see are different challenges? I know that DeFi is very exciting theoretically, and then we have a lot of DeFi platforms today. The overall TVL, the total volume locked, has also increased tremendously. Still, there are quite a significant challenges for wider adoption of DeFi. So, what do you think are the different challenges?
So I think. There are some obvious ones around like the tech, etc. But the top three, if I had to look at from a end user's perspective, it is one: how do I educate myself on this product or app that I'm interacting with? Right? What does it do? What is market risk? What is like the developer risk, etc. And figuring out are there better options for this instrument I'm trying, or is this just the well-marketed one? Right. So I think education in a way that they understand is the first hurdle. Second is just the pure number of steps that you need to get started. Right. And we'll touch on this a bit later, but today DeFi apps just have too many complications on just coming up with simple yield strategies, for example. Right. And sometimes there are cross-chain bridges that you need to interact with, swaps that you have to do, etc., which are all too complex for most users, especially the first time interacting with, right? They don't even know what is a token, and now they're introduced to concepts of like staked tokens, and they need to swap it to some other chain, right? So that is the second. The third one is the fact that with the freedom to interact with any protocol also comes a responsibility, right? And DeFi, we know that it doesn't guarantee safety. It's limited to your own risks and how much you're willing to educate yourself. So that might not be very palatable for a lot of new users, right? Who are used to some sort of guarantees. Whether the guarantees are legitimate or not is a secondary point. At least they know that someone else is ensuring that there is some sort of guarantee, right? So how do you replace that guarantee with other instruments that they also understand? It could be like the simplest form is an audit, right? Can we have like reputation score for contracts? Can we have some other social signals to know, okay, these products are used by these many people, without making that new user go to perhaps some analytics platform to check, okay, what's the TVL, how many people have used this, etc.
Right. So smart contract risk, of course, is one of the most important risks. Cross-chain bridges, again, we have seen quite a few hacks in 2022 related to cross-chain bridges. And of course, a lot of hacks related to smart contracts in the DeFi and various other dApps. So from a regulatory side, from compliance side, what are the challenges that you see in the DeFi space?
It honestly depends on how your risk appetite as a developer to see which is a risk and which isn't. But whether it's DeFi or even any sort of app that deals with some sort of assets, like could be an NFTs, tokenization, etc., is one, an ideological view is how decentralized and how anti-establishment do you want to be, without, even though it might not make too much of a difference to your end user, right? And second is how much do you want to comply, and if you want to comply. So on the ideological side is like, do you want to serve users in sanctioned countries, right? Do you say, yes, I will comply with it, or will you come around with the ways that you can evade them? Most try to comply, right? So that is one. Second is, should you enable on-ramp without KYC, or at least up to a certain limit? And if you do, what happens if the transaction ends up being fraudulent, right? Whether it's stolen credit card, etc. How do you handle chargebacks that happen? So there is a trade-off between UX, because once you transfer tokens to someone, you can't get them back, right? Like in the traditional world, if you do a chargeback, you can always reverse the goods that were also sent to the other person. And the third is, how do you explain the risks clearly so that the user can reasonably say that, yes, I made an informed decision and consented to this action, right? That I knew what I was doing, and it's not the developer to blame. And then also telling the user clearly between what are the market risks with what product they're interacting with versus what are the risks that might arise from a developer being malicious, right? And yeah, and
Absolutely.
from a developer point of view, I guess even figuring out, okay, if we have to comply or if there are roadblocks that we do face, how do we ensure that the network survives even without us, right? Whether it could be a legal arbitrage based on jurisdiction or just the fact of decentralization, etc.
Right. So you use the word anti-establishment. So what I believe is that that's one way of looking at it. If you see blockchain and you see some of the established processes that have been there, like in the case of Aave, so they have external liquidators. So if the price of the underlying asset, the collateral goes down, and the user is not able to manage the number of tokens that they have borrowed, then in that case, liquidation event will happen. Now, traditionally, liquidation itself, this kind of event in lending happens where, one organization takes care of it, right? But then we know a lot of process-related challenges come in, and a lot of bias-related challenges come in that scenario. Even with larger organizations doing defaults again and again, still get loans, but a smaller user, SMB user, etc., do not have that kind of luxury. But if you see the concept of liquidators on Aave protocol, there are external validators, liquidators. There are a certain set of smart contract rules. There are a certain set of activities that they can do. So they do the same thing that has been done today in the traditional finance, but in a very open and decentralized manner. So what I believe is that, there are a lot of processes, whether it be managing custody. So if we talk about real world asset tokenization, so eventually we have to have custodians, right, who would be managing the underlying physical assets, immovable assets. But that custody can also be decentralized to an extent. It can be governed by a DAO, or it can be, have a concept of what the kind of we have liquidators here. And if you see the whole, the new ERC 4337, they're also in some of the concepts where you want to give, let's say, create second or third nominees or separate custodians, you can do that, right? So I think that the process will pretty much do the same thing, but in a very different, open and transparent manner. And that process is much more resilient. That is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So rather than governments or regulators looking at this as a separate thing, it's a technology which is going to disrupt the existing processes, make them more efficient, more resilient, much more secure, right? Yeah. And will remove a lot of biases and corruption and frauds in the processes.
Yeah, and also gives you the flexibility of deciding what that process should be.
Correct.
Right? You can design your liquidator however you want, versus following the definition of government body saying, yeah, this is what a liquidator should be, should do, and be come from, etc.
Right. So now there are two key onboarding challenges that we have faced based on various dApps that we have worked with. So one of the challenges that the existing Web3 users who are still accustomed to using non-custodial wallets, etc. They also find it very difficult to trust any site. So today there are a lot of dApps, and there are a lot of dApps that you interact with. But sometimes, when I invoke my MetaMask to connect with any dApp, and it's a new application that has come in the market, I'm not very comfortable using that application, right? I still worry whether, because my main wallet has got all my assets, and even just to sign a transaction there, just to authorize that wallet to access my wallet, etc., I don't know what is happening in the backend, right? So, and then of course, as a normal user, I won't be able to go and audit their contract to see what kind of code they have written, right? So that is one very straightforward challenge for the existing Web3 users. And if we talk about Web2 to Web3 users, people who are not very accustomed or comfortable or new users to the Web3 space, the major challenge is to set up this wallet and then do all the transactions, and to secure their private keys. They find it very difficult moving from normal email, mobile phone, OTP based authentication, or social login based authentication, moving from there to MetaMask. It's very exciting. It's very cool, but yeah, it comes with its own pains. And third, if you talk about from a dApp developer perspective, so the startup ecosystem has grown massively. There are huge number of grant programs. People are building like crazy, but each dApp developer, ultimately has to bring in users, who would be using their dApp, and they also have similar concerns. How to improve this whole or to solve these challenges, so that even if they are seeing traction among the users, but the users are finding it difficult. So there are real challenges that need to be solved before even dApp owners or different startups can bring in more and more users to use their dApp. So at Arcana, you are solving some of these pressing challenges. So we would like to know the specifics of the product, what you have built to solve these challenges.
Yeah. So before that, I would just love to shed some light on full extent to which the challenges exist today, right? And I'm surprised even the adoption that we already have, given how complex these are to use, because sometimes even it catches me off guard, right? Even though I've been in the space for such a long time. So if you think about the user journey to either a new or an existing protocol, you can think of it in 3 steps, right? So one is you need to create a wallet. Second, you need to have the funds. Third, you need to place the trade, right? And if you look at just the wallet creation, first you need to research what wallet to use, what is it, how to back up your keys, how to create it, what are chain specific wallets, right? What is a good and a bad one, etc. Then you need to go to an exchange, you need to do a KYC, which can then take anywhere between 30 minutes to even 2 days for your KYC to be approved, right? And then you need to transfer money to that exchange, buy the token, figure out what tokens you need to buy, then transfer from that exchange account to your wallet account. And then you need to figure out what's the native gas token for this chain, figure out what is the gas token, how much gas should you pay, and then that's when you're ready to do your first step, right? So you can clearly see this can take anywhere between an hour at least, if you're really good, to maybe 3-4 days, right? And once you've got the assets, then you place the order, you figure out what does that message mean, do I have the right assets, are there any swaps needed, then what bridges do I choose, etc. And then the third step, where you can figure out, okay, did this trade go through? What do I now expect, right? Am I supposed to check some Explorer? Is there a feed I can follow? How do I get alerts if anything happens? Will I get liquidated if I don't watch it at certain frequency, etc. Right? And this is what people traditionally do now. Today, if you go to a person and say, hey, here is Aave, start using it, right? Or if we had any other Uniswap, for example. Now, to build a good UX, we have to look at optimizing all of these steps, right? It's not just the wallet creation. It's not just finding out bridges optimized, because if you don't, then they will drop off at one of these steps, right? You might have a great onboarding experience for wallets, but if the ability to on-ramp is not great, then they don't know what to do next, right? Or if their ability to figure out what assets to buy, then they would have lost money and they would be dejected and perhaps never come back to your protocol, etc. So, and that's what we look to solve at Arcana. It's not just about creating wallets. It's about how do you make it very easy for users and make it very fast for them to go from the first button click to sign up to their first transaction, right? And that is a success metric, right? If your user has placed the first interaction with your app or interact with the contract, being a very new user, then, and we keep reducing that time, then we know that more and more users can be onboarded and retained, right? So what this looks like is one, being able to create a wallet with just your email ID, right? Without making it custodial, because that is fairly easy, right? We have tons of exchanges that hold custodial wallets. Through an API, they issue a wallet address, right? But they hold custody of your assets as well. So we are able to decentralize the way we generate these wallets through distributed key generation that ensures that a decentralized set of validator nodes run the network and the user's keys are stored in parts and only they can retrieve the keys, right? So even we as a network cannot interfere and get access to their keys. And then give them the option of any sort of Web2 identity that they want to create these wallets through. It could be email, Gmail, Facebook, etc. We are also working on a bunch of other region-specific logins like say Line, WeChat, Kakao, sign in with Telegram, etc. So that it's not, because not everybody wants to use perhaps Gmail or email, right? They have their own unique, culturally dominant apps that they typically use to log in. Right? So this is the first part. And second is once they've created the wallet, logged in, how do you help them understand what they're seeing, right? So we do a no UI mode and a UI mode. So in a UI mode, you get a full wallet, you can see your chains, you can see your balances, your tokens, etc. In a no UI mode, the developer ensures that the assets they need are present and the user just hits approve or reject, right? And then everything else is shown on the native app itself. So there is very little cognitive load for a first time user. The third step is, okay, now you've logged in, your wallet is created, you know what you're looking at, you sort of understand what the wallet is. Now, how do you get assets? So instead of redirecting to another portal, we have native on-ramp integrations. So you just click on buy and then you select the tokens that you want to buy and you add your credit card or any other payment method you choose based on your region, tokens, etc. Check out the price. And if it is certain, if it's below a certain limit, you don't even have to do KYC, right? So, and it typically goes through within less than 5 minutes. And then now you have your assets. And the third part okay, now you have the assets to place a trade, you need to pay gas fees, right? Now, either you can allow them to pay gas fee in the token that they just bought, right? Or you can sponsor gas fees on behalf of the user and charge them separately, either beforehand or at a later point, right? And or don't even charge them because you've figured out a business model where you're making money from other parts of your product that you don't need to charge for gas specifically, right? And that's a great step because most people don't know that you have to pay gas, especially if you're a new user, right? You see that, okay, I need to buy this NFT, it's 1 ETH, but then you have to also pay gas fees for that 1 ETH, right? And then you have to go back to the exchange again and top it up more and again spend on spreads, etc., and come back. So gas fees could be really crucial to solve for. And now there are quite a few products that are doing it well. The fourth and fifth are sort of similar. It's around how do you simplify messaging and what are the tools that are available. So if you see a request to sign something, right, to what extent are you showing that information and how easily it is presented? Because most of it is like hex data, signature requests, so very verbose technical jargons that most people don't get, right? So how do you simplify what it means? How do you simplify what is the contract address they're interacting with and what is the expected outcome of that interaction? So there are a bunch of plugins for each of these steps. So it could be to just say, hey, is this a malicious contract? Or if you did click on accept, this is what your wallet would look like after the transaction. You'd get this much tokens, this NFT would come to you, etc. So you don't either trust the wrong contract or you don't do a transaction you did not intend to do, right? And one way this can also get solved is through account abstraction, where you have not just like the end user who's signing it, but also perhaps other third parties. You can set some checks and balances for what are safe contracts, what are not allowed, how much amount can you send, etc. So even if you do end up doing certain things because of bad messaging, at least there are other safeguards in the smart contract wallet that can prevent you from happening, because once you do the transaction, there's nothing you can do to get it back.
Got it. No, I think that's extremely interesting, and it has always been very exciting to talk to you and your team. We had an at-length discussion about what are some of the core technological innovations that Arcana has done. So for the benefit of the users on the show today, how Arcana-based social login is better than Web3 Auth? What are the unique pieces that you have done, making it even better than Web3 Auth?
Yeah, we don't usually
talk about
differentiators with competitors publicly because everyone's working hard in solving.
No, absolutely. So the Web3 Auth is definitely a pretty cool project, no doubt about that. But I think there's different technological approaches, and taking that approach, sometimes if they are solving 6 challenges, you solve 7. So I'm just talking about the 7th one.
Yeah. So where we are aligned is in the decision that the infrastructure that creates this wallet has to be decentralized. Right? There are tons of players and businesses in the ecosystem that do centralized wallets, right? That you can create with your email ID, but very few, in fact, maybe it's just Web3 Auth and us, who does a non-custodial decentralized network, and that's a stand that it's much harder to pull off. But I think that's what users want and that's what developers want, right? And once you're able to pull it off, the experience is just as close and if not better than the centralized solutions. Where we stand out also comes from what we focus on, which is performance, usability, price, or the integration experience, etc. And all of these add up over time, right? With the UX, the latency. These are very traditional approaches to also building good SaaS and consumer-facing products. I think it's, to an extent, the basics of building great products that we also bring into like how we look at user research, how we look at prioritizing features. Yeah, but really good really focusing on like the engineering aspects and optimizing every second interactions, because if you don't, how bad decentralized networks can get, where sometimes you wait up to a minute for certain actions to take place.
Right. And I have seen that right now you support pretty much, you support the DBM blockchains with the solution. So do you have any plans as part of your roadmap to extend this to Cosmos or substrate ecosystems?
Yep, definitely. So there are two things that two types of users we want to serve, right? So one are users that are already present in the dominant networks. So that definitely means going multi-chain, and we will release it in phases. There are about 4 to 5 blockchains other than EVM that will support the next couple of weeks. Our goal is to cover about 95% of the chains. And second is serving markets that are underserved, where it could be an upcoming blockchain, or dev ecosystem, a guild, a DAO, etc. And figuring out what tools do we need to build to bring them and support them, right? Which could perhaps even help them more than an existing or a major blockchain. And third is what sort of additional products can we build that makes all these different chains more usable, right? So because a lot of dev effort goes into just say the EVM chain, right? And for the other chains, it's the dev team themselves that have to build out all these improvements. And the easiest way to solve for that is to add these benefits to the wallet itself, because that's the first entry into that ecosystem. So what we do is have a suite of add-ons that you can plug into your wallet, right? Whether it could be on-ramp, gasless, account abstraction. We are coming up with a chat feature where you can chat with the devs directly. So it ranges across simplicity and complexity, right? So by choosing these different add-ons, you sort of level the playing field of usability across these different chains.
Got it. So if we briefly, because I think recently we saw the launch of ERC 4337, a new way of account abstraction. So traditionally, each wallet account is linked to one key, and if you lose that key, you lose all the assets within the wallet. But with this account abstraction, this specific ERC, now you can add much more features to an account. So let's say you can add two-factor authentication, or various other features. You can add more users to use it. So how this ERC is important for Arcana and your products.
We always thought of building in that account abstraction sort of concept in our wallets since a while, and we would have done it without the proposal. So I think it does a lot to standardize like the best practices of how to do all of these functions. There are definite positives and negatives to doing it well. Just on the positive side, tons of people have spoken about it, where you can build in more checks and balances to the wallet itself and make it much simpler. Though the problem of securing like the first wallet that does create the smart contract wallet also still exists. You still have to secure that until you can add on more signatures and make it sort of a multi-sig in a sense. So that challenge still exists, but it's a slightly easier way of doing it. What I also believe is that it's not great for all use cases. So we don't intend on forcing it on devs. We let them choose if they want to implement it or just go with the traditional public-private key pair for every user. Because your business model might not support it, right? So to enable a smart contract wallet, you need to pay the gas fees. So that means every user who comes on board, you have to pay to create a wallet for them. And it is chain specific, right? So if you deploy it on Polygon, does not mean that wallet will exist on Ethereum or on other EVM chains, right? So versus your traditional public-private key pairs, if it's the same keys on curves on which it's derived, you just import the private key, change the network, it'll work, right? Versus here, you deploy the wallet on every single chain, and that can get very expensive for multi-chain. And then there is also the time delay, right? From just saying create wallet, which can take a couple of seconds, you now have to wait for this contract to be deployed, executed, and then the wallet to be created. So, and based on the network congestion, it can take some time for your wallet to be created. So, and every second is important when you're onboarding a user. And third is the gas fees that it will cost, right? Even if we want to enable gasless for each user. So figuring out, can your model afford to pay gas fees yourself, or you just want you just ensure that the user finds it easy and they pay it themselves. So which can be like paying with other stable coins or other tokens that they have. So you're not paying for it, but at the same time, you're not forcing them to pay in the native gas token. They have other options.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So there are definite pros and cons, and for more wide, like low transactions size, high volume sort of use cases, we see devs preferring the traditional wallets. For other high value tokenized assets, sort of transactions, the smart contract wallet makes a lot of sense.
Right. No, Arvind, it has been great to learn more about the products. I'm sure everyone here has gathered that how Web3 is going to have next billion users. And I think startups like Arcana Network are going to play a major role in improving the user onboarding and thus, user adoption. And we are also very excited that, Zeeve is another startup in the user adoption space where, we provide easy to use APIs, one single API, you can connect with different chains, and then automated deployments of different kind of nodes and networks in just few clicks within seconds or minutes, enabling developers to build dApp faster, roll out dApp faster. And then, in combination with Arcana, where they improve the whole user experience of end users, I think it's a very exciting time to be in Web3. So now I'll open the house to attendees if they would like to ask any questions related to user adoption or user onboarding or any of the Arcana's products or solutions. Please feel free to ask. Yeah, so one of the question by Gurendra Dua, we need to remove the government out of the loop and explore new ways of governance. The challenges being discussed are largely Web2 existing corporate governance problems in an entirely new paradigm. This whole subservience to AML narrative is totally misplaced. So, Arvind, if you would like to answer, I'll just put my thought into this. So, I think it's not about removing an organization or removing the government per se. See, governance is a very important factor. It's a transition. So Web3 is always a transition. It's not that we replace something with something else. It doesn't work that way in the real world. In the real world, we transition from something that we have today and something better that we can build or realize or use. So that is how things are moving. Specifically for governance, the whole concept of governance at how decentralized, because it's not that 100% decentralization is the best way of doing things. So again, we are going to move there. But right now, if you see DAOs, they have tried to put in critical decision-making where there can be a lot of frauds or biases, how that can be decentralized and have more people participating. But, as we have seen in some of the DAOs where, the initial players or stakeholders, they have substantial number of tokens. So if your voting is based on number of tokens, then again, it's not very decentralized. But I would say it's still better than a completely centralized one where just one person is taking a call. So it's a transition that is going to happen. And we are seeing that slowly, whether it be organizations, whether different government departments, we are going to see these decentralization start happening and Web3 penetrating there. Arvind, you would like to add something?
No, I mean, you pretty much did a great job of covering that. I don't think we'll get rid of governments anytime soon in doing this, because anything that impacts people, they will want to have a say in. Right? There's no one use case where they just let people run wild, and they might not get it right the first time, but at least as a ecosystem, there could be a balance that we reach. And I think the resistance is also good. It helps us introspect and see where things are going, what we should do to instill confidence even within them. And we should also not forget that we live in a multi-government world. So, and not all governments face similar challenges or have the same ideology when it comes to different technologies, right? So, and they have to compete with each other. So there is that natural balance that exists where, for everyone that is too anti-Web3, there are governments that are pro-Web3, right? And it's sort of like open markets. We will see like the best version come out. It will take a couple of years of iterations, etc.
Right. Yeah. And blockchain is a technology that is going to bring both, so there are use cases where you see disruptive innovation. There are use cases where you see incremental innovation. And wherever you see incremental innovation, I think a combination of established large players and the new technology can actually bring in a lot of value in this and some of the use cases. So a bank which has been running for 100 years, is highly liquid, has got huge number of users, has got a huge brand and trust and presence. If they resort to a new tech and change the ways of doing things, of course, I think that can also play a major role in some of the use cases. So not everywhere I would say that, things would be disruptive and you would be replacing the existing organizations or institutions. There would be a combination of both depending on what problem you are solving using the tech, whether it's more of an incrementally improving efficiency, faster settlement times, etc. Then of course it's more of an incremental innovation we are talking about. But then blockchain has given us new business models, like the whole concept of NFT marketplace. It's something very, very novel. The whole concept of DeFi, just attach your wallet and in a non-custodial way and having full control over your collaterals also. It's something very exciting, cannot be even thought of using the existing technologies. So I hope, Gurinder, that answers your question. Now you have also asked, account abstraction is not chain specific. I thought all Ethereum compatible blockchain can function with one account. Am I wrong?
Yeah. So I think I briefly did cover this. So what account abstraction behind the scenes is basically a standard for you to build out a smart contract wallet that's capable of X number of functions, right? And so that wallet is still a smart contract, right? And if you want to deploy a contract on, say, Ethereum, does not mean Polygon will understand what that contract is, or Binance will not understand what that contract does, right? So think of like an NFT collection. If you want your NFT collection to be available on multiple chains, you need to deploy it on every chain, right? So similarly, if you have a smart contract wallet on Ethereum, to use the same functions on another chain, you need to deploy the same contract or a different contract on a different chain. So having a wallet on one chain will not mean that you can use it on other chains. But your EOA, which is the externally owned account, which is your public-private key, can of course be used across chains.
Right. Yep. So, Gurinder, I think you have some other questions. If you want, we can always have a discussion apart from this session. There are a lot of ideas. I would love to have a discussion with you around blockchain tech and some of the things that can be done, especially in the governance space. So, Arvind, it has been a very nice session, very interesting to learn about Arcana products. I think our users liked it a lot. And with this, we wish you the best for upcoming innovations within Arcana and the ecosystem. And we are very excited to partner with Arcana, and because we at Zeeve, at a Web3 infrastructure side, continue to build our community, and we want to bring in more and more exciting startups, exciting products that can make the life of building dApp much faster, and eventually, making the life of end users easier. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Ravi. Akash, Gurinder, if you want to chat more, to drop by on a Discord, I'll be happy to engage one-on-one. And thanks so much for staying through this almost an hour long discussion. It's been a pleasure.
Right. Thank you. Thanks everyone for attending this. And do follow Arcana and LinkedIn, Zeeve on LinkedIn, Twitter, Discord, etc. And we continue to do these webinars and talk series. We'll keep on bringing more and more users, owners, innovators, builders on this talk show. Thank you.